Welcome, episode number 11 of NFT World, Legendary. How are you doing?
GM, I'm doing excellent. Currently watching the ETH price moving up, getting close to 1500.
What
I
the
don't
hell is going
understand
on?
why we're moving up that fast. It does feel a bit absurd, but it's enjoyable to watch. Maybe if we are, it's at 1480, and once we're done with the podcast, we could cross the 1500 mark.
Yeah, let's see. That would be a good omen for the week if, as we speak, the price continues to rise, or whether this show is actually a bad omen, and as we speak and as we've noticed it, we now hit the top and start to dip. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on, but at the same time, the sentiment seems good, right? Like people, I feel kind of happy. We've been talking earlier. You seem kind of happy. Is it just because it's nice weather, or is that even why the price is going up?
Maybe it's a bit of both, but like Twitter last week for me, or the last 2 weeks, was full with, ETH touched 1100, touched 1200, and people were like, this is the last pump. This is the last pump. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're going down. And we went up and up and up, and we're up like 50% on a scale of 3 or 4 weeks. Which, I don't know. I don't think it's going to last for too long, but it's enjoyable to watch. And the good weather also helps, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a bit suspicious, but at the same time, it just felt like no one's got any bad feeling left. Like the negativity, everyone was all negativitied out. There's nothing left to give. When the inflation was super high last week,
yeah,
it was almost as if people did react slightly, but then the market had nothing left to give on the downside. So I don't know, man.
I mean, I think that's a bit of the difference to the last, crash bear market of 2017, where I remembered people being like, okay, it's over. That was it. Like the sentiment per se was way more negative than it is now. Because even when ETH hit, 900-ish, people were like, how low will it go? When is the time to, fuel my bags and buy back in? As to 5 years ago, people were like, it's over for good. And now people are like, okay, wait, when can I accumulate more ETH? So I think that also, comes into play a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a factor. So in line with this kind of positive market sentiment, we're going to be speaking today about a few things. One, we're going to talk a little bit about the high sales that have been happening and how, in general, the top collections are still doing pretty well. The market's obviously bouncing. And within this kind of framework, we want to touch a little bit on the marketplace battle going on. So Gamestop has entered the marketplace space and is doing pretty well, frankly. So we're going to touch a little bit on that and that general battle that's going on. We're also going to talk about the game battle that's going on, in the sense that everyone wants to build a game. Everyone's got these NFT collections. I get the sense sometimes they don't even really know what to do with them. So they conclude that they should build a game. Some people are doing much better than others, and other deeds. Yuga Labs had brought out their kind of first test version of their game this week, and it was received pretty well. So we're going to dive in a little bit to that and to see to what extent that was interesting, useful, impressive. And then finally, we're going to look at some of the dangers of the space, because they're still very much existing, where we're going to look at one of the big hacks that took place this week with Premint, which is a very established community and product, as well as the 3 Arrows Capital liquidation, where there's all sorts of fantastic NFTs up for grabs. Starting with the marketplace stuff, Legendary, what do you think about Gamestop?
They had a pretty good launch, actually, right? So I think their public beta launched 6 days ago, the 12th of July. And in the first 48 hours, they did a solid volume. They did around 2K ETH, bit more than 40,000 transactions. And now if we compare that to Coinbase, It's more than Coinbase did since inception, which is like at around 1,700 ETH. The marketplace, I mean, I can't access it from continental Europe without a VPN, but with a VPN, looking at it, it looks pretty nice. Apparently, very very tight knit to Immutable's layer 2, and also highlighting all the projects like Guild of Guardians, Ember Sword, who recently, by the way, migrated, big game that is about to be built, migrated from Polygon to Immutable as well. So the marketplace looks nice and certainly seems to hit the spirit of the Web3 community more than Coinbase did. And being on layer 2 and requiring you to move funds to Loopring, to Immutable, it's actually more difficult to use than Coinbase was. So they definitely have been doing something right. I mean, the bridging is still seamless, and it's a simple deposit transaction, but still it's another additional hurdle that you have to take before you can use the marketplace. Coinbase didn't have that, but they completely missed hitting the core NFT community.
So am I right in thinking then you can't necessarily sell your mainnet, kind of like you wouldn't be taking your art NFTs, your Fidenzas, your Punks comics, your Bored Apes over to the GameStop site to sell there, right? Or could you?
Right now, I think it's only Loopring and only the Immutable projects. I don't know if they plan on building layer 1 support as well, but as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, you couldn't sell your Fidenzas, etc.
Okay, so it's like a layer 2 based project, which is typically the stuff that's been going on Immutable already, which is mostly game focused, right? Which makes sense for a company GameStop.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, also the interface, to be honest, looks kind of nice. It certainly needs a bit more work in terms of searching stuff and navigating the platform, but it looks good.
So in a way, taking this comparison with Coinbase is an interesting comparison because Coinbase did horrifically in the sense that they had this huge lead up time. They were hyping it all, in so many different ways. They had all these launch partner artists that they were announcing periodically. And then there was never really a launch. I don't really understand when the launch was, but they were constantly saying, oh, so-and-so is our launch partner. Now we've got another launch partner. Now we've got another launch partner. And then nothing really happened. I think you could then claim your name on the Coinbase NFT marketplace. And then there was no movement. But at the same time, we're not really comparing the same thing, because if you're saying Coinbase NFT was a custodial wallet also and market, but then GameStop is for layer 2 stuff only. So we're not necessarily comparing the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's certainly a difference, but certainly a difference in focus as well. But the thing is, with GameStop, I didn't have the impression that I read that much about Twitter on it. Like, it felt like Coinbase Marketplace was way more hyped.
Yeah.
And GameStop, yeah, of course there were a couple of articles, but it feels like it just was suddenly there. And if I go back looking at Coinbase and looking at the last 24 hours, it did like 17 ETH, like 23K in sales. And it has like a couple of days where there's something happening on Coinbase. Like a couple of days ago, 180 ETH were traded on the marketplace. So I don't know where these volume spikes really come from. But it certainly feels like GameStop's launch went way better despite way less hype.
Yeah, definitely. I bet that the spikes on Coinbase, I don't know this, but I would suspect people list things on Coinbase, forget about it, then suddenly the price becomes out of sync with the prices on other marketplaces, and there must be arbitrage opportunities from something that someone posted on Coinbase, but they don't look on Coinbase. So you could probably buy off Coinbase, given that there's no eyes on it, and then go and sell it somewhere else where where the activity actually is.
Actually, a very, very good point you're raising. Yeah, it's very smart. And also in terms of marketplace launches, we talked about Reddit a couple of weeks ago, I think, or 2 weeks ago. A very, very hard to remember time links in the NFT space.
Yep.
And now the Reddit NFTs, the collectible avatars, can be bought publicly. And I did this last week. I bought like a set of 8-9 avatars. And I have to say, I was seriously impressed with the user experience, with the user interface, with how they explained, how can you take custody of the wallet that they created for you, and also how they navigated the entire user flow. And they didn't talk about NFTs in the press release, and we discussed it in the spaces.
Yeah.
On the app, to be fair, they talk about and they reference the avatars as NFTs, and you can watch them on IPFS, and they call them NFTs all the time. They explain what it is. So they're doing very good on that. But what's really cool to see is if you buy multiple avatars and you like, I don't know, you like the hat of avatar A and you like the jacket of avatar B, you can basically combine them and mix and match between all of your avatars. It doesn't happen on chain like Avgotchi does, for example. It's still only, optics, but it makes for a pleasant experience that you can toy around and basically create your own unique NFT-based avatar. They also highlight you if you have an NFT avatar and comment. They also use a hexagon shape in a very similar way as Twitter does, but it's way more prominently displayed so that everyone can see, this user has an NFT in the background. And if you click on it, you can directly view the user's NFT. They're doing pretty well. I really enjoyed the user flow.
That's interesting. The thing I find interesting about that is maybe that makes sense in the sense that when you normally go to pay for something, you don't go and pay for a lottery of anything really. Like if you like a product, you just buy the product that you specifically want, or you buy the package that you specifically want. Whereas what happens with the rest of the NFTs at the moment, if you think about it, is everything's randomly generated. You just get what you're given. And then even after that, it's not very tailored to you because it's all done. All the attributes are already decided. It's part of the metadata, and you can't then really hack things together. I know that there are certain projects that have played around with traits and like you can add things on, etc., etc. But to make it part of that initial purchase maybe is the way to go, because why would a customer think, well, I'm going to pay you money and then after I have to then pay additional money to upgrade or to amend or to change? That's not a great user experience or customer experience, really.
Yeah, it is. And I know if you look at, the traditional NFT space, the closest thing that comes to mind would be Nifty Tailor, where basically, you have your ape and you can put your ape in an Adidas hoodie, etc., all visual changes, and just have a new PFP. That's like the closest thing that would come to it. But it makes sense if you strip away our experience in Web3 and NFTs and purely look at it from a collectibles perspective, where it's exactly what you just said. I buy 2 collectibles. Even if I buy clothes for myself, I might want to, combine that jacket with another cap, etc., so that you can actually create your unique avatar. And what it also allows for, if you have like 1,000 avatars that look very much the same, we don't have 1,000 Reddit users that display the same user avatar, because even they can change and alter that to their specific individual preferences.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so because we spoke about this as well, mainstream perception of NFTs has still up to this point been very hostile in various ways. And I had been under the impression that Reddit was one of the places where people were very hostile also.
Yeah.
How has that community responded to this inclusion or incorporation of NFTs into their platform?
I can only talk from a personal experience right now.
Yeah.
The majority of people ignore it. A couple of people commented on my posts that I have a nice avatar. But to be honest, 100% of those people had an NFT avatar themselves. occasionally there was the "Why would you pay for your avatar?" comment, um, but it wasn't too negative of a reaction. I mean, there's still love to hate in various subreddits, love to hate on NFTs, or make the joke on why don't you make that an NFT if there's like a funny post, etc., but in a very sarcastic way. So I don't think that the overall sentiment towards NFTs on Reddit has really changed, but I think that also, such a change of heart just will take more time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
No one insulted me in my DMs. That's a start.
That's always very positive. Okay, so in that marketplace battle, it seems like lots of other people are getting involved, and some are doing better than others. We mentioned this, and this might be something we speak about more on our Thursday spaces in the airdrop season section of our content. But starting to get, given that so much of our content is focused on layer twos and the opportunities there, we were just speaking off air about how it might be useful to start using the Gamestop platform just to get a sense of what's going on there, just to kind of get some exposure to their platform and what they're building.
I very much agree. Yeah, we will definitely do that, especially as Loopring is a very interesting layer 2 solution per se. GameStop also has its own wallet. They are definitely building an ecosystem. It ties perfectly in our exploration of layer 2s with 32 Dreams. So definitely going to build some content around that, I think.
Yeah, that's fun. And I think, like, on a personal note, I know we focus more on the NFT stuff here, and then we go off into the other exploratory layer 2s, technical stuff on other days and in our other content. But this is one of the more fun things about the space. It's like, yes, you come in for NFTs first, and you come in for the culture, and you come in for the identity element of buying your NFT and having it represent you in some respect. But there's so much more interesting stuff going on behind the scenes with the tech, and even these battles between platforms, how the layer twos are getting built out. So much interesting stuff to explore, and I hope that, in a similar way that this has sort of been my journey. You come in with one thing, and then you just get taken off in these other directions of super interesting, literally falling down the rabbit hole, down the layers from layer 1 into layer 2. That was my experience, and I think that's probably the experience of a few other people too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think NFTs certainly can work as a kind of anchor that pulls in new users on a new layer too. And I think we saw that very prominently in the beginning with Avgotchi, who the project that back then, like, I think we're talking a year ago, roughly, maybe 1.5 years ago, I don't remember exactly, when they migrated just before launch, they decided to migrate from ETH to Polygon and postpone the launch a bit. And at that time, on Polygon, there wasn't the Uniswap fork. There was QuickSwap as the very first swap there. And it was really the Avgotchi users that populated QuickSwap, that populated the layer 2, and it brought a massive influx of users. Definitely think, because people typically are more passionate about NFT collection that you like than about using derivatives protocol of any sort, right? So you wouldn't move from Arbitrum to, say, Optimism just to use your favorite derivatives protocol, which probably either way is multi-chain already. But with NFTs, you have almost every time the situation that they are focused on one chain. And I think that people definitely move or follow their project or move to a new chain, explore a new chain because they have a cool project. But it's just following up with one more point on that. I think it's going to be interesting if we're going to see some more NFT projects that will try to build cross-chain or even cross-blockchain.
Do you think that would be possible?
I've seen it with the Japanese-born apes. I remember that we talked about them in the very beginning. They, by the way, they did a pretty nice climb in terms of floor price. And now they tease that each Ape's gonna get a soul mate, pun intended, on Solana.
Ah, that's cool.
I don't think that they will be able to interact with each other, but they did require holders to share the Phantom wallet, their Solana address, so that you can claim your airdrop on Solana based on your ETH holdings. And it's nice that we see a bit of this cross-chain and cross-blockchain exploration happening.
That is interesting. Do you think they're going to give the exact same asset just on Solana?
No, I think it's going to be the companion
airdrop
else? From my understanding.
That's interesting, because that will be an interesting way for communities to expand. And in fact, that's just a really interesting experiment to see how that goes. I'm not aware of people doing that before necessarily, where you launch on one chain and then you think, okay, our companion drop will be on another, particularly if your pre-existing community doesn't exist on that one.
Yeah.
So that would be a very interesting experiment.
Yeah, but I think the future has to be interchain at some point. Like, especially if you think we're going to need interchain marketplaces. If you want to sell your full set of, imagine Bored Ape, Mutant, Kennel, The Deed, and if that were built on multiple chains, you would need a marketplace that can aggregate those for you to build a bundle to sell it as a whole.
Yeah, that does make sense. And tying back into our conversation, we were just saying, the battle of the marketplaces, this is still one of the biggest battles, right? And this is why still people are still trying to launch. Other ones, Coinbase tried, LooksRare have tried.
Yeah, absolutely.
OpenSea is still the market leader, but people are going to keep trying to get that marketplace volume because it is just such a huge prize if you can establish yourself.
That's true, but you know what's interesting with OpenSea though? Undeniably number one on ETH. They also support Solana, and they don't really get traction on Solana. It seems like the whole Solana community mostly rallied around Magic Eden.
No,
and
it's
interesting to, find out why OpenSea can't really have the Solana volume as well. Like, why are they failing to get or to capture the potential revenue stream? Because it seems like they are defending the ETH volume pretty good, and people still are very hesitant to move off to X2Y2 or LooksRare. But on Solana, on the other hand, they don't really manage to get a lot of market share or dominance there. Again, if OpenSea would manage to build a cross-chain function so they can bundle Solana stuff with ETH NFTs and sell them as a bundle, that could be, like, not a lot of use cases for that right now, I'd admit, but that could be a game changer for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's that would be very interesting. And yeah, at the moment, it does seem to be the case that different places are specializing in their own chain. But yeah, as you say, the goal maybe is to create the place that can do everything and be the one-stop shop for everything. That would be the huge and very aspirational aim. Let's move into a little bit. We spoke about spoken about the marketplace battle going on. There's also all sorts of games being built out, and one of the previews that was the test versions that was released in the past few days was that of Yuga Labs and the Bored Apes team, where they released the Otherside, and people were pretty excited. So I think one of the kind of short ways to summarize what happened is a couple of weeks ago, there was a test version where people kind of interacted in a space, but it wasn't populated properly, in the sense that there was no items around, there was no landscape. It was just characters running around in a big space. People were pretty excited about that, to be honest, but lots of people were commenting that, look, this is not an impressive thing. There's no backgrounds here. There's no buildings. There's nothing. This is not actually a super difficult thing to execute on. Whereas this time, there was stuff. So one of the first places the group of characters got to explore was the Bored Ape swamp, and you got to run around there. All these characters were doing all sorts of things, and I understand that there were missions to complete. And at least in the previews, I wasn't in there myself, but it looked pretty cool and the response seemed pretty
Yeah,
positive. What did you think about this from a technical perspective and general kind of
well, from a
reception?
technical perspective, it looked pretty good. I would agree. The first tech demo where people were hyped about, a couple thousand characters running around in an empty room is nothing to really be excited about. This should be an expected standard, but now we had an environment, way more complexity, still worked smoothly, so that's pretty good. What I think about it on a general level is that Otherside is very, very smart about the way how they do the tech demos. Because, and we discussed this in one of our previous episodes, the biggest risk, in my opinion, for the Bored Ape ecosystem is launching the game. Because if they can't live up to the expectations, it's a make it or break it kind of moment for them. And by them, and this is what they also mentioned in the light paper, opening up the whole development process, sharing everything that's going on, trying to get as many users as they can for the tech demos and tech tests. They have a constant feedback loop with the community. They constantly are aware of, do they like it? How's the sentiment? Where can we improve on? Are we living up to the massive expectations and to the massive hype that's built around and exists around our project? So I think, generally speaking, super smart approach how they do it. I like that.
Yeah, that it does make me think though that one of the ways to be successful in space, it's not really like, as you said, the tech was impressive in a way, but it's not undoable. Like, it's not an unimaginable feat to do those things. But the smartest thing that they're doing is just managing people's expectations, communicating properly, getting some tests. It looks like they've actually got a project road. I mean, people joke about roadmaps in the space and how either they don't get done or they're just there for show. But it looks like they do have a legitimate strategy behind them, which is saying, okay, this week we're going to do this. Next week we'll follow up with this. And then the week after that, it will be related to the previous week in this way. And then that's going to feed into what we do the week after that. Like, there's a coherent strategy and being put into place by the team, which I think, to be honest, those kind of project management skills are not necessarily seen in many of the other
I am
projects.
nodding in agreement. I think that's very true. And I think that does two things. On the one hand, it makes it more tangible because you can look forward to what's going to happen the next weeks. You have a very, actionable plan of what's being built in the short term. And they also blend in teasing stuff and, showing a bit of the long-term perspective. If you scroll to the light paper, again, there's this section we talked about this, the Coda origins / the decoupling. More information will be revealed as we get closer to this stage of the Voyager's journey. So they are, feeding into the Coda decoupling rumors again, because most roadmaps really only seem to have that very long-term, very fuzzy teasing part in them. But they do a very good,
Yeah, everyone's very good at
yeah,
doing that in our space. Very good at teasing, like, oh, and if you just wait 2 weeks, we're going to really produce something great. Like, always saying that. Space is very
yeah,
good at
and
that.
and I feel like Otherside is also obviously good at that, but way more important on delivering actionable and tangible short-term plans and not only talking about the grand vision.
One of my thoughts when I was looking at this, because I saw there was this element where they kind of attempted to defeat this boss character, and all of the people had to like jump at the character at the same time or together to defeat the boss. And I was thinking, I know people are getting excited. Like, there's lots of people all working together, and there's something very striking about that. But these games have existed for a while, and having this boss kind of character is not a new thing, right? I remember in Super Mario, you'd get to the end and have to try to defeat someone. It are What I was trying to unpick was, are people excited about this because they've got so much money invested in it and it feels fun and it works, or is this actually fun? I I, I don't know. I'm not a huge gamer myself, but it looked cool. I would give it that. But I'm trying to really unpick, are people's opinions sincere in the sense that is this fun, and is it going to be fun for other people who don't have huge amounts of money invested into the NFTs? And then my separate point was, well, does it even need to be fun? Is this necessarily even going to be a game? Or is this just a really cool world where people are going about their business, maybe playing a game if they feel like playing a game, or maybe just hanging out in the swamp, or maybe just hanging out somewhere else and doing various things, maybe just hanging out in their virtual space? So yeah, those are my two thoughts. What do you think?
I think that the tech demos are fun if you're part of the ecosystem really, but you also can't expect the tech demo to be fun for everyone. So I think it's fun from the point of view right now that you have an ape. An ape is very valuable. You get to use your asset in a way that you couldn't do before. You get to see your ape running around the swamp, but that wouldn't be fun like for people outside of the ecosystem. But it's also not the goal of the tech demo at this stage. So I think that the game per se could be, well, the first fun game in the NFT space, really, if they manage to continue on the path of building it in the way that it looks like they're doing right now. And with the other point that you made of, is it a game or is it just a cool place to hang out? I think it could be both. And there's like a lot of, theories or rumors going around that there's going to be like two sides. So the top and the bottom side of, well, Otherside, and one's just to explore and hang out with your friends and chill, and the other side, the kind of dark side, is where you do the questing, fighting against monsters, etc. So I think, and this makes sense, that they would try to build both, like a place to socialize virtually and a fun game to draw in more people into playing it.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, after watching, and this is not financial advice, or this is us just thinking out loud, not really knowing anything about anything. After watching it, were you tempted by the land, like the other deeds themselves as NFTs? Because there's 100,000 at the moment. There will be another 100,000, which I believe will be distributed in some way to the people who are participating in this testing environment, and other deeds holders at the moment. It's not clear how that happens yet. The price action after the preview was pretty flat, I think, but like there was high volume. But I think it went up slightly, or pretty much.
No. Floor price is still
like,
at 2.75, but as you said, the volume was massive. Massive means 6K ETH in the last 7 days, which puts it in the second spot. First spot, 18K, just for, to have a figure to compare it to, is CryptoPunks with 18K ETH, and Artblocks at 4.5K in the third spot. So yeah, volume was definitely there. And to answer your question, yes, of course, it made me more interested in land again. I do have a couple of other deeds, but I want to have some more, because I think the same argument or the same line of thought that I made with Pixel Vault 1 or 2 podcasts ago, that we need more assets and we need more than 10K players in an ecosystem, and 10K really stakeholders, shareholders, to make it a massive game, also holds true for Otherside. And still, if you think about it, 200,000 plots is not, I mean, absolutely it is a lot, but it's not a lot if you think about building a game for millions of people. So not financial advice, but definitely interested in expanding my land holdings.
Yeah, me too, actually. I don't have any, but seeing it play out a little bit more, and I might actually do a little bit more research into some YouTube videos of, because I saw this really great summary on Twitter of the various tasks that people needed to perform. And obviously when you cut things up into a summary, you can make things look far more interesting or more exciting than they were. But my general impression, based off the content that I've seen from it and the reaction to it, was that this was a very, very things are progressing very nicely there. And look, the question is, if they can't do it, like who's in pole position right now for the metaverse kind of land world building play? Like they're in the pole position, I think. I know Sandbox have existed, Decentraland exists, those things still exist, and they're still interesting in use. But my understanding is their user numbers are seriously
Yes,
low.
yes.
Like
Sandbox is super fun.
daily users
Like the
numbers.
Sandbox, what is it, Alpha, Beta, was fun to play. It was fun to see the different kind of experiences. I remember playing Vampire Story and trying to explore what was happening in that scary place, but also like having a jump and run, having this and that experience. But as you say, the user numbers are rather low. I think the same can be said about Blancos, which have been around for a while. Also, yes, they have a
Yeah,
community, people playing it, but it's not the community in the sense that Bored Apes have.
exactly. And I mean, one of the issues is just onboarding and getting people in. And I just get the sense they are in pole position. Actually, look, I'm not saying what I'm going to do necessarily, and don't copy me. But since I started talking about squiggles 2 weeks ago, and then didn't act, they tripled. So maybe I should actually act on my instinct this time and just buy another deed or something like that. Because yeah, I did think it was pretty impressive, and I do think that they're in pole position as well. So that's something I'm going to think about a little bit more.
Definitely. And I'm also kind of curious to see how the coda decoupling is going to play out. Still on the verge of getting a coda.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't understand what a coda is properly. I don't think they've even explained fully what the coda is, what it's going to do, etc., etc. I know they are rarer than other lands without them, but I don't know. It's a very interesting ecosystem, and they're doing a great job. Yuga Labs are
Yeah,
doing a great
100%.
job at slowly building out their metaverse vision. It's excellent. So definitely worth considering and well worth discussing here today. Moving on to some of the more difficult and problematic elements of the space, where again, this is another week where people have had their assets stolen from them because of a hack that took place with a very reputable company called Premint. Premint is a company which essentially lets you log in and it's a service which allows people to log into the site, and you can see all the projects which are taking sign-ups for whitelist opportunities to buy the project. And so what happened the other day was that people signed up, but instead of signing the normal transaction, a different transaction was asked. Well, people were asked to sign a different transaction, and what that meant is, well, it was a very different transaction to what it was supposed to be. So do you want to go into that a little bit, Legendary, and explain what happened at a high level?
At a very high level, and all details aren't clear yet, but from what it looks like is that basically you have the set approval all function for coins, for NFTs, for tokens really. For example, if you go on OpenSea, you set approval for an entire collection, like all the Bored Apes that you have. It basically means that OpenSea can interact with them and can list your apes, and only require you to submit the signature, and because you pre-approved the whole collection. In a similar way, with ERC20 tokens, we discussed about that on 32 Dreams. If you use Swap and you approve that the Swap platform can access all of your USDC, if there is a malicious exploit, all of your USDC could be drained, as opposed to if you only pre-approved 500 USDC because this is the amount, non-revolving, that you wanted to transfer or exchange for another token. And from what it looks like is that a certain file on Premint was manipulated, and basically instead of having a wallet connection or a transaction signature, whatever, that was the wallet connection by, signing into your wallet. Users had to sign something else and lost their NFTs. They probably signed on a pre-approved collection on OpenSea. And with that being said, again, goes to the, structuring your own security, making sure if you have valuable NFTs that they live in a separate wallet of your hardware wallet, that if you have NFTs that require interaction, such as a Premint collector pass, that this again doesn't stay in the same wallet as all of your valuables. And I mean, of course, this shouldn't have happened in the first place, but there's so much you can do about your own security in this space to avoid a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you shouldn't pre-approve collections that, of stuff that you don't want to sell. And if you want to sell something that's of high value, move that to a separate wallet. If you want to sell, I don't know, a Fidenza, move the Fidenza to a separate wallet on your hardware wallet, approve it there, list it for sale there. Don't do anything else with the wallet. Don't sign anything. Don't interact. And when you sold it, transfer the ETH back to your vault, to your cold storage, whatever, and do what you want to do with your ETH. I think this security practice of having a cold wallet, cold storage that doesn't do anything, that just holds the NFTs, and that wallet doesn't interact with any other contracts is very good. Then have a wallet that you use for selling stuff. And then again, this is only for selling on OpenSea, and this wallet doesn't do anything else, not logging into any other platforms, etc. And then have your wallets that you use for logging in, for using more platforms, etc., that just have a more general exposure to Web3 contracts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's just, as you just outlined, there are very clear kind of best practice ways to separate your valuable assets. And they don't have to be exactly that, but like there's got to be some sort of strategy employed, whether you choose precisely what you've just outlined or whether it's slightly different. You might have, particular NFTs and have a slightly different approach, but you've got to not be interacting regularly with the wallets which have your most valuable stuff. Like it's just got to be the case that you take your own precautions because the space is not developed enough for other people to protect you. And that's just one of the dangers of being in the space at the moment. It's not ideal. It's not super consumer friendly. It's just a harsh reality which you would much rather avoid and not get burned on by taking your own precautions and taking that responsibility yourself. So I'm not actually sure. I know that Premint are making a list of the people who are affected by the hack. And I don't know how they're proposing to resolve the situation, but I saw someone else writing about this the other day about how they didn't think it should be normalized that if you get hacked from a platform or a protocol, that it's then the protocol's responsibility to reimburse you. Because look, I guess in a sense it is a security failing on the protocol to have got hacked. But at the same time, smaller protocols, or even large ones, it's just one of the risks in the space at the moment. And maybe it's not reasonable for people. I mean, if people lost 10 Bored Apes, 20 Moonbirds, and a bunch of other stuff, like that'll bankrupt someone. That'll bankrupt a whole company on one hack. If it was expected that those people need to pay out. And so I'm certainly not of the opinion that it should be expected that people pay out, but I know that is one of the routes that communities and projects are trying to take for their communities if possible. What's your view on that, by the way? If someone does get hacked, what's the smartest, most reasonable response?
I'm very empathetic to people losing their NFTs, to losing assets, and it's very good to see that communities who can afford that are trying to help their members out and reimburse them in a way, but that's not a long-term solution. That's also on the one hand, I see the danger that it just incentivizes people to not really take care of the security, because there is someone that's going to reimburse them or help them out. And if you try to compare, that if someone gets hacked, it's the protocol's responsibility to reimburse people. If you try to compare that to a real life situation, if I have a break-in into my house and I didn't lock the windows, didn't lock the doors, didn't take like this standard security precautions, my insurance is not going to pay for my claim. They're going to check, was the window locked, was the door locked, and in essence, and we don't have those standard practices for wallet security lined out by insurance companies yet. But in essence, if there were insurance for, insure your Bored Ape against it being stolen, an insurance company certainly would come up with a standard set of things to do and what is, responsible way to interact with the wallet and keep your ape secure. And they certainly would rule out something like randomly interacting and signing stuff with a thing that should be valuable and just be stashed, and make it more a case of, this person got social engineered, or they somehow got access to his ledger. He was, I don't know. Yeah, so there would be a set of good practices for handling your assets safely.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like in this circumstance, this is and people need to get this into their heads. Unfortunately, like, look, it happens to people. It could happen to people when they're just not paying attention. It happen to really experienced people when they're not paying attention. But ultimately, what's happening is you are signing the transaction. That's the unfortunate thing. I know that it's a hack and someone else has changed the transaction and it's not the transaction you expected, sorry. But you as an individual are looking at a transaction that is not the correct transaction and you're signing it. And that's always going to be an issue. Like if you take the action to give the access to the person, there's not an insurance company or anyone who is going to cover you in those instances because, it literally doesn't make any sense to cover them, frankly. So it's at the moment we're in the position where, look, we just have to take as much precautions as possible and be vigilant. And
I think there's also a sense of false security around using a hardware wallet such as a ledger that basically says, if I use a hardware wallet, I don't need to use my brain anymore and I just can do whatever I want and my assets are safe, which is certainly not the case, because you need to read what you sign. And this is something where we already seen some approval in terms of EIPs that try to make signatures of transactions more human readable, and they are getting better. And we are getting to a point where you can read your transaction on your ledger, that is, whatever hardware wallet you're using, and making sense of the text in there and really see, is this what I'm signing really what I'm supposed to sign? And even on platforms that you use daily, because Premint, I used Premint daily and it was safe to use, but it can, as this case very, well shows, always be hacked at one point in time and make it unsafe to use on that day. So just because you trust OpenSea or you trust Premint doesn't mean you don't need to verify what you're signing every time you sign, even though it can get pretty annoying. I absolutely understand that.
Absolutely. Very, very, very important. I want to close on this kind of interesting story and crackpot idea that I have, which I think we should try to make happen. If not us, then someone. I'll put an open request out for someone to try to make this happen. We talked a little bit on our Thursday spaces about the 3AC liquidation and how obviously 3AC have gone bust. They're in a process right now where they're trying to get as many of their assets liquid so that they can try to pay their creditors who they owe money to. One of the aspects of this is that they have this tremendous NFT collection, which was purchased, I think, by the vehicle called Starry Night, which many people will be familiar with. I think it was set up by 3AC, Vince Van Dough, and a couple of other creditors. And there is a character on Twitter who is claiming, I think correctly, to be a creditor because he's going around sharing the legal proceedings as they go on. I don't know if that's legally sound to be doing that, but that is what he's doing, called Soldman Gax. And I'm following. It's going to be really interesting to see how this goes about. But the reason why I bring it up for the NFT World podcast is because my understanding is they're going to need to liquidate this tremendous collection of NFTs. And for people who don't know, in the summer of last year and moving into maybe September, October, 3AC, as along with others as part of Starry Night, were going around buying literally the top of the market, spending hundreds of ETH / thousands of ETH even on particular NFT collections, and buying the very best bits, like not floor pieces. They were buying the rarest, finest pieces. So this collection is unbelievable. If you go through it, it's just grail after grail after grail, and it's going to have to go on sale. So I'm very interested to know what the process will be for this. I've seen other people express an interest just casually on Twitter, like, oh, I'd be a buyer, or would like to be a bidder. I think this would be the best NFT conference that has been so far, since now all the NFT conferences are just used as opportunities to go to a particular place and meet people outside. No one actually buys a ticket and goes in, although sometimes people do a little bit. What this could be would be amazing. We'd actually go, and the NFT conference would be centered around the auction where we actually go and then either be in the room as people bid, or we have events around the auction. So what do you think? Is this a good business idea?
To have a conference around the most significant auction of NFT grails in the space so far.
And on top of this, so look, I don't know where it would be, but the liquidation is happening. So the joint liquidators of the company have been ordered by the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in the High Court of Justice in the British Virgin Islands. So I think NFT Twitter and crypto Twitter should go on holiday to the Caribbean to observe and participate in this historic auction. And but to be clear, right, like Christie's do auctions, Sotheby's do NFT auctions, and they're all pretty lukewarm compared to this. Like, yes, they pick some nice pieces and whatever, but they're not like the best pieces around that reach there. They're just pieces that certain collectors put forward to be sold at auction. That's just not the same as
we
what
should
this
look into
is.
conference venues in the British Virgin Islands to see if we can make the BVI NFT auction festival come to life.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into this actually quite seriously. So let's have a look. Anyway, Legendary, top episode. That was good fun, very, very interesting as always.